Alrighty, it's 6:31. I'll go ahead and get started here. This is David Glenn with the National Weather Service. Before we get started, I just would like to remind everybody to please mute your phones. All right, so what's the latest and greatest on Hurricane Dorian? All right, so this is the briefing we just sent out to our partners at 6 p.m. I'm going to go on to our situation overview here. This gives you the latest and greatest on the hazards, what we're expecting as far as impacts and locations. If you read through there, I'm not going to go through each one individually. We'll go through some additional slides to show you some of the more specifics on the individual hazards and their impacts. But I want you to notice that we are still kind of far out in time, or a little bit too far out in time to give you specifics that I wish we could give you. Right now, we can't tell you exactly how much storm surge you're going to get, how much winds you're going to receive, or even to the specifics of how much rainfall you're going to receive. So we're going to go through some images here, but I just want you to realize that the threat for eastern North Carolina has been increasing, and we'll go through that here each slide by slide. So you can see right now, Hurricane Dorian's down in the northern Bahamas. You don't see it very often, but if you look there where it says movement, it's sitting stationary. That's just something you don't see very often. Usually they're moving, but right now the steering currents have collapsed. Over the next day or two, we'll be able to see Dorian move northwest along the Florida coastline, and eventually north and northeast towards us late Thursday into Friday. So what to worry about here immediately? The top thing that we've been focusing on is rip currents right now, because while the temperatures are 80 degrees, the water is nice and warm, the ocean may not seem like it's that dangerous. We're getting large energy swells coming in from the south, from Dorian, that is creating a very hazardous surf zone. So we've had a high threat of rip currents, and that will continue throughout the storm. Like I mentioned, we do have increasing confidence that we'll see some direct impacts starting as early as late Wednesday, with the highest probability of impacts being likely Thursday and Friday. But again, some of these impacts that we could have are really track dependent. So until Dorian starts moving north and getting a little bit closer to us, we won't be able to increase our confidence much until it gets a little bit closer. One thing we really want to reiterate: don't focus on just the track alone. Remember, as these storms gain latitude, they get closer to us, the wind field often expands, so we'll have impacts that have felt well away from the center of the storm itself. And the category, don't focus on the category. Right now it's a category 4 off our coast. It could be a category 2. Don't focus on the category. That only tells you about the winds. It doesn't tell you anything about the heavy rain threat. It doesn't tell you anything about storm surge or tornadoes. So that's a thing that we're really going to have to hammer on with our friends, our family, our constituents in the community, not to focus on the category of the hurricane. So where are we at as far as our threat levels? From left to right there, you see flooding, rain. We're pretty confident that one is around the high level. Right now we've got 5 to 10 inches, with locally as high as 15 inches in the forecast for the storm total duration of rainfall for Hurricane Dorian. Storm surge and winds, we're at moderate right now, and low for tornadoes. Those three are very track dependent, depending on where the storm goes. Will depend in a couple of days. We'll see some tweaks to those portions of this slide as we get more confident and get a better handle on what kind of impacts we're going to see as far as surge, winds, and tornadoes. Over on the right here, you see that we've increased our forecast confidence right here, sort of to the middle part. We're feeling a little bit more confident that we're going to see some impacts from Dorian, but we have our highest confidence in the rainfall aspect of it. How about tropical storm force wind speed probabilities? It continues to increase. As you can see, there's a pretty strong gradient there from what's going on along the coast versus our inland counties, Martin, Pitt, Greene, Lenoir. Right along the coast, we're almost at 90%. That's a pretty high probability, so that's something to remember for our coastal communities. But even as you get as far inland as the coastal plain counties, we're looking at 50 to 60% probability of tropical storm force winds. So something to keep in mind. As you see there in the middle bullet, tropical storm force winds may arrive as early as late Wednesday night, but are most likely to arrive on Thursday. We'll show you some time of arrival graphics here shortly as well. For our military partners, 50-knot wind speed probabilities, these continue to increase and are highest where we are here along the coast. So something to keep in mind, the trend keeps increasing there. Hurricane force wind speed probabilities, similar thread, they continue to increase with the higher values along the immediate coast. Earliest reasonable time of arrival, remember this is when you should have your preparations completed, and that's for us would be Wednesday. Wednesday, 8 p.m., it's right there along Onslow County, Duplin County, those areas for this graphic. And if you move on to the most likely time of arrival, that's sometime Thursday. So as we mentioned, try to have your preparations completed by Wednesday, with the most likely time of tropical storm force winds being sometime on Thursday for eastern North Carolina. Rainfall, what are we expecting? As you see at the top banner there, locally higher up to 15 inches possible. So right now, if you look at our text forecast, it'll say 5 to 10 inches, locally up to 15 inches. And this is a little track dependent, but not as much as storm surge, tornadoes, and the wind aspect. We can have rainfall that can go well inland from the coast or well away from the storm itself. So something to keep in mind. We do show a pretty sharp gradient there as you go inland from the coast of these diminishing rainfall amounts. So just keep in mind, though, this graphic is valid through Saturday morning, and we're looking at Wednesday through Friday as being the peak time of our heaviest rainfall. What about rip currents? We're going to have high-threaded rip currents throughout the week until the storm is done, and actually once Dorian is well off the coast sometime Saturday into late weekend, we'll still have high-threaded rip currents. So please help us communicate that with the community. And here's our last slide on the key takeaways. Something to remember is, like we mentioned, we're 3.5, 4 days out from potential impacts. So it's a little too soon to give you specifics as much as we wish we could. It's just whatever we were to give you right now as far as storm surge value or wind speed value for any given point here in eastern North Carolina, we likely would be wrong, and it would be a disservice to you and our community to do that. So right now, we really want to highlight the potential for life-threatening surge, life-threatening winds and wind damage, the potential for increased tornado activity. We are fairly confident on the heavy rainfall aspect of this, leading to flash flooding and potentially to river flooding a couple days thereafter, because you know that river flooding we can get well after the storm is gone. And there on the last bullet, very dangerous to extreme marine conditions expected across the area with the high-threaded rip currents. So the next slide is just it's the final slide saying we'll have another briefing by 8 a.m. in the morning.